So, Lucy, hi. It's been 7 months since we had our discussion at the UKRD Summit back in March. Is the UK clinical research environment in a better place now than it was back in March this year? And what signals do you look for to help you test the temperature of UK clinical research?
Well, thanks, Nick, for the invitation to have this follow-up chat. I think it's a great opportunity to reflect on where we've come and where we want to go to. I am so conscious of the ongoing phenomenal work that you and the community do towards making the UK this standout place for clinical research. And it's at a time when we know that the NHS is stretched, and yet what I am seeing is not just green shoots, but flowers blooming. And I think that happens because we are seeing such a sort of combined effort by so many people. It also comes down to why we're here. It's about making a difference to patients and citizens. I think the signals that show that is really comes out of the reset programme, when we wanted to focus much more on the where were we aiming for, rather than the sort of just the what are we stopping. And if you look at the achievement to have reached 80% our target by our July 2023 deadline was phenomenal. And I think what it showed is that people were completely behind that let's get research into a thriving place. And that's really what I've heard, that actually people do want to be in that place, and they want to feel that the research environment is a good place to be. So I really sort of recognise the signals. I mean, I think our October progress report, which is freely available, publicly available, is showing all of our metrics there. It's not to say that it's just about metrics. I think you have to sort of use intelligence from the workforce as well, because you can't numbers without that. But 80% of studies open to recruitment, but also those other metrics in the status report that tells us that things are definitely all heading in the right direction, accompanied by what are we hearing from your members. Do you think that's a sort of do you recognise that framing of it, Nick?
Yeah, absolutely. It does feel like maybe despite the early pain, if I can put it that way, around reset, it does feel like we can reflect back now on a really successful process, which has really helped organisations think about their portfolios perhaps in a way that they weren't thinking about previously. So and carrying that forward into how they manage those portfolios going forward. Absolutely.
I think the other metric that again, what does it mean, is on number of participants per month, and to be at over 80,000 and to be sustained tells us that there is this real appetite for participation, and that is enabled both by the R&D teams but also by the research delivery teams, and that is heartening, because I think that's how we make a difference and to the patients, and even for them to be participating is one of the steps on that journey.
Sure. Thank you. In March, you spoke about the importance of team working between all players in the health research system as an essential part of delivering a better, more productive and more equitable research system. In your view, are we making progress in that respect? And if so, what are the outputs of that join up that resonate most for you?
So I think this is completely crucial. And I think that what we have both amongst the senior leadership of many of the organisations involved in this research ecosystem and at working level is we've got teamwork as we've sort of never seen before. We did actually road test this in COVID, and by and large we really tested it and people absolutely came through. But what we've tried to do is ensure that pulls through. So a couple of examples of that is, we know that MHRA was having real challenges, and by working together to help undo that bottleneck, and NIHR put support that their way to do it, and there was general understanding that we were not going to do finger pointing. We were going to do how do we come together as a team to help with that and to help with the what next. So when the approvals come through, we know that the R&D community have stepped up by taking those forward. So I think my view is we are so much stronger working as a team. There is never going to be a single individual or a single organisation that is responsible for every part, because we've got independent regulators, we've got, quite rightly, some areas devolved, for example, to site teams. So we've got this way of working that says, let's not have bulges along the pipeline, let's work together so that that path through research, but whether you're a patient or a commercial sponsor or an academic investigator or a charity, that you can see that. And that is clearly where we are also heading, to remove those bumps and barriers. And I think if we can all say, what is our contribution to that, it will go better.
That really reflects, thank you, some of the work we've been doing within UKRD as well, with our partners at R&D Forum and the University Hospitals Association, to work closely with MHRA, HRA, etc., to think about how we can work together differently and better to look at the whole system and where improvements can be made across the whole system. So that's really great to hear. So, of course, it's still challenging times in the NHS. What steps do you at the Department of Health and Social Care and we as R&D leaders need to take to achieve sustainability of research in this very pressurised and expanding system?
So that's so crucial. I think the first thing is to really acknowledge that the pressures that staff are under. And I think we see that from the frontline perspective. So clinical staff being spread thin, that having many waves and ripples across the wider health and care system. Those who would like to be research active being pulled more, both in secondary care, but also particularly in primary and community care. And so I think we have an opportunity to present research as part of that, sometimes slightly medium to longer term, how can we make this better? So there is an argument when you're firefighting to say, don't forget to make time for the fire prevention, because otherwise we're going to be firefighting for longer. And in fact, what we see particularly from workforce is that they really welcome the opportunity to as much as anything, to help retention in our workforce, to say, if you have that time and space to see the bigger picture through participation in research, in any number of ways, then you see the point of what we're trying to do. And it's not only about the pressures here, the pressures that are present here and now, but it's also about saying, how do we improve our outlook? So I think that for many of us in the health and care service, we really recognise how things are, and we want to use research as our way of saying we can't afford for it to stay like this. We are going to evolve our health and care system, and research and innovation is a big part of the answer to that. It's not to minimise the pressures we're under, it's to say we are part of helping that.
Yes, and to a certain extent, the Shape the Future NHS 75 campaign, this coming month, is really well timed in that respect, isn't it?
And I use that definitely in my messaging in July, and also in future messaging coming out, to say we could not be a bigger part of Shape the Future. Look at where the NHS has come over the last 75 years, and look at the research, look at the part that research plays in shaping the future of the next 75. And that's why we always have to find the time and space to do that, and to acknowledge that research, better outcomes for patients through a number of routes, better for the workforce recruitment and retention, and better for the system. So just asking everyone to acknowledge that, and how we are the ambassadors for that messaging.
So I recall another challenge you set us in March, was to get away from the sort of binary view, if you like, of commercial and non-commercial research, and focus instead on how we can work together across the system to make a more equitable offer, I think was the term you used, to incentivise and deliver the right mechanisms for commercial and public sector funders and partners in a sort of truly high quality mixed portfolio. Do you feel we're making progress in that respect?
So that's a good question, and I think there is still a perception of tension by some of where it might be felt that we're putting incentives in for one group or another. I think we have to continue to ask ourselves about that equity and about that the systems that we're putting in place, as far as possible, making it fair for everyone, both for funders, sponsors, participants. And there's many different ways of sort of cutting the data that would allow you to say, well, you know, are we over prioritizing one group or the other? But the reality is that we are certainly, from the DHSC point of view, trying to be as fair to all groups, so that we don't. Why? Because it's better for the patients, which is what we come back to, and saying there is, you know, how do we make sure that there is enough incentivization for everyone to be part of this? The numbers showing that we've got recruitment of over 80,000 participants shows the appetite, where feasible, for research participation. And then the next part of that is how do we ensure that the offers are equitable to all of our funders? I think an interesting point is that we've done a binary cut of commercial and non-commercial, but actually recognising the increasing commercial collaborative work, which is funded by industry or industry plus partners, and then sponsored by an academic or an NHS institution, really shows how that interplay between commercial, academic, clinical is actually really important, and there is value. Those collaborative approaches are valued by many. So it's just one example of how our systems are set up in certain ways, and we're still going to count and do the metrics like that. But actually, let's keep on looking for the opportunities to harmonise and converge. You'll note that the huge progress we've made on NCVR, and I really thank the R&D community for all they've done on the work there. So how do we say we might have processes that we take first into one area like commercial, and then say, how do we do more of that, removing barriers, particularly where we see the benefits?
Thank you. I guess my final question, we're just 4 months away from our next UKRD Summit, which is on the 11th and 12th of March next year. That's not long, admittedly, but what do you want to see that is different or better by that point?
So first of all, I think we should recognise what is going well and where the R&D community are already delivering so strongly. I know from my time as an obstetrician in maternity that calling out the good behaviours is one of the most powerful ways to reinforce them. And actually, we've learned that in maternity, that it is as strong an incentive to say, look at all the good work that is going on, and keep that momentum. So that team approach, that reducing unnecessary friction in the system. This is a call again to the R&D community to say, how do we ensure that what we are doing is high value, of benefit, and improves the pipeline and the pathways? And how do we keep on saying, let's do less of the low value? We know that the role the R&D community plays is so crucial, both on the enabling, but also on the sensible sort of checks and balances. But what we are seeing, and through all the work that the RRG group and other areas take forward, is a real focus on streamlined pathways, patient-centric work, whilst accepting that, you know, some things will be new ways of working. So I think we should be seeing, quite rightly, a move, not, you know, sort of to go much more into primary community care, to make it patient-centred, and that is absolutely welcome. So to take those areas forward, whilst not whilst continuing to deliver on the other areas. I also call out ensuring that research continues to be embedded into clinical services, and not seeing it as something different. We've got other areas of work, such as that data enablement, that I think is accelerating because of the increasing role of data. So for me, it's about continuing to note the very positive direction of travel, and to ask, how do we do more of what is most effective and most efficient, so that we all carry on in this direction?
Thank you, and really helpful comments for us to think about in the run up to that summit next March, and almost just sort of shape some of the discussions that we'll have at that meeting. So thank you very much for those. Lucy, as ever, it's been very good to talk to you. Thanks for spending the time to share these thoughts with us today.
Well, thank you, Nick, and I'm really looking forward to coming to join you in March, and also to just reflect how how all of this community feel involved, engaged, and carry on making such a big difference.
Thank you very much.